Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Nice to see you all here. I would like to talk today about something that is generally not discussed that much. Anyway, let's just get stuck into it and we'll see if it's of interest to anyone. The basic point here is that if you are monolingual in life, then you should probably be thankful that you have been able to be monolingual. I bring this up because there's a certain arrogance amongst some people who study foreign languages. They seem to think that studying foreign languages is intrinsically elevated or elevating. You sometimes encounter people saying, "Oh, I pity people who only speak one language because they're missing out on so much. There's so much that they can't experience, blah, blah, blah." Is that sort of arrogance common? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I wanted to address it because actually learning foreign languages is one of many, many different things that you can do in life. And although I think as a pursuit, as an endeavor, it has many strong points, many benefits, many advantages, I don't think there's anything particularly elevated about it or elevating about it. Is it unusually difficult in some regards? Yeah, it is, but so is, being some cutting-edge astrophysicist. Lots of things are very hard. It's hard to be a concert pianist. It's hard to be an award-winning architect. It's hard to be a Michelin 3-star chef. It's hard to It's hard to be a surgeon. It's hard to spend 40 years doing a job that you hate to look after your kids and your family. Lots of things are hard in lots of different ways, and it's not obvious to me that language learning is particularly special or elevated, like I said, or elevating. You're not elevated just because you're studying a language. On the contrary, I know monolingual people. I have monolingual people in my family, surprise, surprise, people who only speak English, and they get by just fine in life. And they have very rewarding lives, and they find pleasure and gratification in life by doing other things. Hey, who cares? Why study a language if you don't have to? What I want to get at here is the fact that if you only study one language, if you only know one language, your native language, if you've never really given that much of a stuff about learning foreign languages, the chances are that in some sense, in some sort of civilizational sense, you are a winner in life. You are on the winning side. Congratulations. You have not had to engage in these things other people do have to engage in to some extent. You get by in life. What I mean is that if you only have one language and you don't feel any particularly strong need or desire to study any other language, then what that means is that your sphere of activity, the sphere of activity that's opened up to you through your language, has been big enough to encompass your life and everything you've ever really wanted to do in it. A lot of people are not in that type of situation. The people who are best at the most languages tend to be people who come from small, relatively marginalized, relatively impoverished countries, stroke cultures, where knowing only your language isn't good enough for you to access the things that you want to access in life. I recently have been teaching English to Russians and Russian speakers more generally. And many of them are people who have left Russia or Belarus, or in some cases Ukraine, because of certain ongoing political issues that have, in one sense or another, driven them out of the countries that they come from. And there are people now who are desperately trying to learn English in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s, even in their 40s or their 50s. And having to learn a foreign language, not because you want to, but because you've been spewed out of your own country into somebody else's at the age of 58, that isn't much fun, right? It's quite ironic. If you look at what used to be the Soviet Union, the Russian Empire, you have lots of smaller ethnic groups, smaller peoples who, for one reason or another, have learned Russian because it opens doors. Armenians, Georgians, people from Azerbaijan, people from the Baltic states, people from Central Asia. They've had to learn it at school, they've had to learn it to develop their careers, their professions, what have you, in the Soviet Union. Russian has been one of those winner languages that people converge on. Russians themselves have not learned Armenian or Georgian or Uzbek or Kazakh because, hey, what for? They're the aggregator, they are the carriers of this language and culture that sucks other people in, right? It's a great irony in a sense that so many Russians, so many people who in some sense are winners in this lottery, are now being spat out of that system and having to experience the difficulties and the pressures of having to learn some other language when really you'd rather not, and hey, maybe you're too old for it anyway. That is a tough situation to be in. Russian, English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, perhaps Mandarin Chinese. Hey, the big languages. If you speak one of these languages and you can function entirely within that language throughout your whole life, you have been fortunate. Armenian probably isn't going to cut it. What about Albanian? Is that going to cut it? If you stay in Albania forever, yeah. But knowing English, being able to speak German, for example, if you want to live in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, that is a big deal. If you speak English, if English is your native language, you won the lottery. You can go anywhere. You can go anywhere, and there are people who will try and accommodate you. I've had Russian, Belarusian, maybe Ukrainian students as well. They've got jobs in the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Denmark, and the language that's required of them to work in those multinational environments is English. People want to move to Germany, but it's English they're learning. People want to move to the Netherlands, but it's English they're learning. You know, English is the great big sort of evil, ugly toad at the top of the hierarchy here, right? If you can speak it natively, thank your lucky stars, because you have been very fortunate in life. Next on the ladder, Spanish, French, I suppose, Chinese, Russian, things like that. People who speak these languages natively are in some sense very fortunate, very fortunate. There are people in Mexico who do not natively speak Spanish. They speak their own native, indigenous, Native American, if you like, languages. What sort of life and career do you think you can build in Mexico if you don't speak Spanish? What sort of education are you going to get? You're going to go to university, you're going to become a doctor if you can't speak Spanish. There are people who have to learn. There may not be that many of them, but I'm pretty sure that there are people in situations like that in Mexico. So language learning is great if you want to do it, and it sucks if you have to do it against your will or because necessity has forced it upon you. So I don't think we should over-romanticize language learning. People like myself and many of the people who are watching the videos on this channel will be relatively unusual in this sense. They have a passion, they have an academic interest, they have an ongoing life interest, whatever it may be, and that's what's led to them learning one or more foreign languages. But we shouldn't over-romanticize it. The brain only seems to learn languages properly when we're very young. Everything else is leftovers. My Russian, my Japanese, my Spanish, they're leftovers. They're the cruddy stuff that your brain is still more or less capable of doing. And don't get me wrong, I speak some of these languages quite well, but I speak them as a foreigner. And natives and non-natives are doing qualitatively different things when they speak Russian. What I'm doing when I speak Russian isn't the same as what my Russian teacher is doing when she speaks it. Why? Because it's her language. She is Russian. We're always playing catch up. We're never good enough. We're never skilled enough. We never pronounce things well enough. We never understand the grammar well enough. Even if you're good, you're still not good enough, in a sense. And sort of scrapping about with these leftover capacities in our brain isn't for everybody and should not be, like I said, romanticized to too great an extent. So if you can get by in life with your own native language, great. Because you're at the top of the tree when you're communicating in your own native language with other people who are speaking it non-natively. If you're the only native English speaker amongst a group of people who are forced to speak English, that makes your life a hell of a lot easier, and it gives you an ease and a status that those other people will never be able to replicate, no matter how good they may come to be. So, you want to study languages? Study languages. I've spent tens of thousands of hours studying foreign languages. But if you don't want to do it, if you don't think it's necessary, or if you've tried it and you think it's a pain in the behind and you don't want to do it anymore, just relax, don't do it. Plenty of other things to do. Be a brain surgeon or a concert pianist, or run a fish and chip shop. If there are people buying your fish and chips, then that means you're providing them with something that they actually want, and that is worth something too. Don't get too fixated on learning languages. It's not the be-all and end-all of anything. That's it. I just wanted to say that, maybe get it off my chest in some sense. Thanks for listening, if you were listening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.